The House will come to order. Please join Minority Leader McKean in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you so much. I was going to ask, but then I felt that would be bad. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Love you, brother. Love you too. Mr. Gregorio, please call the roll.
Representative Zamabile.
Here.
Arndt. Bacon. Baisley. Benavidez. Burnett. Byrd. Bockenfeld.
He's still in audit committee.
Representative Bockenfeld is excused. Bradfield. Caraveo. Carver. Catlin. Cutter. Doherty. Duran. Escar. Exum. Froelich. Geithner. Gonzalez Gutierrez. Gray. Representative Gray. Hanks. Herod. Holtorf. Hooten. Representative Hooten is excused. Jackson.
Here.
Judah. Representative Judah. Kennedy. Kip. Larson. Montine. Luck. Lynch. McCluskey. McCormick. McKean. McLaughlin.
Present.
Michelson Janae. Mullica. Neville. Ortiz. Pelton. Pico. Ransom. Rich. Ricks. Roberts. An audit, isn't he? Roberts. Representative Roberts is excused. Sandridge. Representative Sandridge. Sirota. Snyder. Soper. Sullivan. Tipper. Tatone. Valdez A. Valdez D. Van Bepper. Van Winkle. Weisman. Will. Williams. Woodrow. Woog.
Good, you? I'm perfect. I don't need
Young.
anything. I was just gonna say one to go.
And Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, thanks.
With 63 present, 2 excused, we have a quorum. Representative Hanks.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Journal of Wednesday, March 24, 2021 be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk.
You've heard the motion that the journal be approved as corrected by the chief clerk. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Announcements and introductions. Representative Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to remind everyone that today the Children's Caucus will be meeting virtually at noon to hear from the Department of Human Services, to hear about the response to COVID-19 and to the ongoing needs of our families. The Zoom link will be shared to your state email, and we hope to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Duran. Representative Valdez A. Valdez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of House Energy and Environment, we will be meeting today at 1:30 sharp over in LSBA. Or actually, halt, we're going to be in the Old State Library today. So, FYI, we will be hearing 2 bills, 1189 and Senate Bill 12. Again, Energy and Environment, we're in Old State Library today.
Representative Herod.
Members of the House Appropriations Committee, we will be meeting tomorrow at 8 o'clock. We will hear 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bills as printed in your calendar.
Representative Neville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, I just want to welcome back former Representative, now Commissioner Lori Sane to the Capitol. Please say hi to her if you see her today.
Welcome, Representative Sane. Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, you may have noticed some beverages on your desk. Usually each year, the Colorado Beverage Association hosts Beverage Day on the first floor to share their latest products and industry innovations. The Colorado Beverage Association members Coca-Cola Durango, Keurig Dr. Pepper, PepsiCo, and Swire Coca-Cola have facilities across the state, including Pueblo, La Junta, Denver, Colorado Springs, Newcastle, Johnsontown, Brush, Craig, etc., etc., etc. They employ over 3,000 Coloradans, and each of their members' products are 100% recyclable. Given the COVID-19 restrictions, the association won't be on the first floor this year, but you each have a 6-pack of drinks on your desk featuring a variety of their members' products. So make sure to take an extra close look at your 6-packs. Apparently, they include a QR code that you can scan and learn more about the industry and its community's impacts in Colorado. Enjoy your beverage.
Representative Byrd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Finance Committee, we have a fun meeting set up for today. Upon adjournment, Committee Room 112 will be hearing House Bill 1156, 1155, 1157, and 1153. I will see you soon.
Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Business Affairs and Labor Committee, we are meeting this afternoon at 1:30 in room 112. We are going to hear 3 bills, 1199, 1163, and 1051. 1159 is on the calendar, but that will be laid over at the sponsor's request. So just those 3 bills. See you there.
Thanks. And in regards to that, I have a quick announcement. Representative Kennedy will replace Representative Ortiz on Business Affairs and Labor for today only. Representative Arndt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Agriculture, Livestock, and Water Committee will meet upon adjournment in 107 for a presentation from the Colorado State Forest Service. I think it's going to be very interesting. We're going to learn about the watersheds and forest fire mitigation, so on and so forth. So please be there. Thank you.
Representative Will.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's an honor to serve with you.
It's an honor to serve with you too, Representative Will. And hold on one sec.
I have a tribute.
Members, we have a tribute.
I'd like to have it read.
State of Colorado, in memoriam, the House of Representatives convened in the 73rd General Assembly hereby extends sincere condolences and expressions of sympathy to the Dawson family on the passing of Earl Edward Dawson. The state of Colorado has lost an outstanding citizen and an exceptional human being with the passing of Earl Edward Dawson. He will be remembered as a beloved husband to his wife of 73 years, Donna, as well as a man who never was too busy to share his love of life with those around him and was known for having the strongest handshake in the valley. Mr. Dawson was a proud and quiet veteran who served with the Army Air Corps during World War II and would go on to be an active member of the American Legion Post 164. Earl wanted his family to know and never forget the hardship and joys of living in the Old West. Even in his later years, he was happiest sitting on the porch of his cabin with his family, contemplating the lore of the outdoors and the pleasures of the simple life. The members of the House of Representatives express their heartfelt condolences to the family and friends of Mr. Dawson on this tremendous loss. On request of Representative Perry Will, given this 25th day of March, 2021, State Capitol, Denver.
Representative Will.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hope I can do this, man. It's great, man, justice. But it gives me great pleasure to honor such a great American today. Earl was a centurion. He was 100 years old. There's very few of us make it to 100 years old. And Earl was the epitome of a life well lived. You know, he's a friend to everyone that knew him, a model citizen, and an icon in our community. He displayed a work ethic that very few could mirror. He exemplified what it is to be a father, a husband, a brother, a grandpa, a mentor, and a role model to others. He was a man of integrity, honor, strength, and truly grit. He was a salt of the earth type person that embodies the spirit of the people this nation was built on. Truly a legend in his own time. Earl fought a world war so the citizens of this country could be free, and he cherished that freedom every day of his life. Earl always felt the real heroes of World War II, the ones that didn't come home. He never felt entitled to the accolades. He was a humble man. His wife of 73 years wanted everyone to know that he loved God, he loved his country, and especially his family. Rest in peace, Earl Dawson. The people of this state and the nation thank you. Well done, my friend. So Earl Dawson, he taught firearm safety, hunter education for me back in my game warden days. And he was one of the best instructors that we ever had. He loved the outdoors. He loved mentoring young people. And he done that with his grandchildren, his children, all of that. And so I want to recognize in the gallery today is his daughter, Gail. Gail, could you please stand? His son-in-law. His son-in-law, Dale, who I might, please give him a hand. Who I might mention is Colorado Outfitter Association Outfitter of the Year this year. So give him another hand. I'm quite familiar with their outfitting business, and they are great outfitters, and that's an honor that's well deserved. And he actually hunted and outfitted in my old area, so know the family quite well there. So also his grandchildren, Leah and Micah, are there. So thank you for joining us to honor their loved one and to celebrate a great American. God bless.
Thank you, Representative Wall. And to the family, welcome to the House Chamber. Further announcements and introductions. Representative McLaughlin.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Education Committee, we are changing the order of the bills today on the schedule, so take note. We are first doing House Bill 1010, then we're doing 1200, and then we're doing 1104. So we'll see you there at 1:30. Thanks.
Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I have another announcement. Today is IDD Awareness Day, and normally we all gather in person for lunch, but it will be completely online this year. A link to watch the presentation from 12:30 to 1 should be in your emails. And if you registered ahead of time for lunch, it will be available between 10 and noon for pickup on the ground floor by the elevators. So I'll try to make that announcement again before we leave so y'all know where to go get your lunch. Thanks.
See no further announcements or introductions. The next order of business on the calendar is third reading of bills, final passage. Mr. Gregorio, please read the title of the House Bill 1048.
House Bill 1048 by Representative Valdez A., also Senator Rodriguez, concerning a requirement that retail establishments accept United States currency for purchases.
Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the passage of House Bill 1048 on third reading and final passage.
The question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1048 on third reading and final passage. Seeing no further discussion, Mr. Gregorio, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Amable, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Amable votes yes. Representative Jackson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Jackson votes yes. Representative McLaughlin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative McLaughlin votes yes. Representative Beasley, Bockenfeld, Catlin, Duran, Harrod, McKean, and Rich. Please close the machine. With 47 aye votes, 18 no votes, and 0 excused, House Bill 1048 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Gregorio, please read the title of House Bill 1152.
House Bill 1152 by Representatives Valdez D. and Lynch, also Senators Kirkmeyer and Zenzinger, concerning the repeal of statutes related to the obsolete Capitol Dome Restoration Fund.
Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the passage of House Bill 1152 on third reading, final passage.
Question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1152 on third reading and final passage. Seeing no further discussion, Mr. Gregorio, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Amable, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Amable votes yes. Representative Jackson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Jackson votes yes. Representative McLaughlin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative McLaughlin votes yes. Representative Lontine, Representative McKean. Please close the machine. With 64 aye votes, 1 no vote, and none excused, House Bill 1152 is adopted. Co-sponsors. The classic vote no and co-sponsor. Please close the machine. Mr. Gregorio, please read the title to House Bill 1154.
House Bill 1154 by Representatives Lynch and Valdez D., also Senator Moreno, concerning the elimination of obsolete provisions of the Child Care Contribution State Income Tax Credit.
Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the passage of House Bill 1154 on third reading and final passage.
The question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1154 on third reading and final passage. Seeing no further discussion, Mr. Gregorio, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Amable, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Amable votes yes. Representative Jackson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Jackson votes yes. Representative McLaughlin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative McLaughlin votes yes. Please close the machine. 65 aye votes, no votes, and 0 excused. House Bill 1154 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Gregorio, please read the title of House Bill 1158.
House Bill 1158 by Representatives Lynch and Valdez D., also Senator Kirkmeyer, concerning non-substantive modifications to sales and use tax exemptions and in connection therewith reorganizing sales and use tax exemptions for agriculture, livestock, and special fuels.
Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the passage of House Bill 1158 on third reading, final passage.
The question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1158 on third reading and final passage. Seeing no further discussion, Mr. Gregorio, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Amable, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Amable votes yes. Representative Jackson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Jackson votes yes. Representative McLaughlin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative McLaughlin votes yes. Representative Neville, Representative Woodrow. Please close the machine. 65 aye votes, 0 no votes, and 0 excused. House Bill 1158 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Representative McLaughlin, co-sponsor. Please close the machine. Mr. Gregorio, please read the title of House Bill 1177.
House Bill 1177 by Representatives Valdez D. and Lynch, also Senators Moreno and Woodward, concerning the inclusion of use tax exemptions for certain existing sales tax exemptions in order to make the exemptions compatible with fundamental principles of sales and use tax.
Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move House Bill 1177 on third reading and final passage.
The question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1177 on third reading and final passage. Seeing no further discussion, Mr. Gregorio, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Amable, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Amable votes yes. Representative Jackson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Jackson votes yes. Representative McLaughlin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative McLaughlin votes yes. Representative Bockenfeld, Lontine, and McKean. Please close the machine. With 65 aye votes, 0 no votes, and 0 excused, House Bill 1177 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Hold. Okay. All right. Co-sponsors. Let's try that again. Well, hold on. I think we're having a technical difficulty. Hold on. All right, hold on. It says Bill. Why don't we close the machine? Yeah, okay. We're having a technical difficulty. If you would like to co-sponsor the very popular, it appears, but we'll actually see how popular, House Bill 1177, will you please raise your hand and I will call out your name and we will make sure that you are added as a co-sponsor. Luckily, Representative D. Valdez, you are already a co-sponsor. Representative Lynch, please add Representative Lynch as a co-sponsor. Are there additional co-sponsors? Representative Pico, Catlin, Van Beber, Baisley, Van Winkle, Will, Ransom, Carver, Snyder, Ricks, Minority Leader McKean, Neville, Geithner, Sandridge, Luck, Williams. I'm pretty good. Unfortunately, Representative Sane, you can't co-sponsor. Representative Byrd, Gray, Mollica, Tipper, Mary Young, Titone, Lontine, Bradfield. Pretty good with my names up here. All right, we're going to close. And Soper, now the co-sponsor verbal machine, Bockenfeld, is now closed. Okay, that brings us to the end of the third reading calendar. We will make sure that the technical glitch is fixed. The next order of business is general order, second reading of bills. Representative Sirota. You have heard the motion. Seeing no objection, Representative Sirota will take the chair.
The committee will come to order. With your unanimous consent, the bills will be read by title unless there's a request for reading a bill at length. Committee reports are printed and in your bill folders. Floor amendments will be shown on the screen and on your iPads. Bills will be laid over upon motion of the majority leader, and the coat rule is relaxed. Let's see. Mr. Gregorio, please read the title of House Bill 21-1167.
House Bill 1167 by Representatives Duran and Will, also Senators Gonzalez and Scott, concerning re-entry in construction contracts governing improvements to private real property.
Representative Will.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 21-1167.
To the bill.
And there's no committee report. So this bill's, when I first heard about this bill, I was very intrigued because the existing dynamic didn't seem quite fair to me. And to make sure I was understanding it correctly, I spoke to contractors in my district who are all in favor of this concept. This is a bill that I'm running because I support people in my district. House Bill 1167 is a solution for small businesses that I fully support. It's a way to bring small and medium businesses into the construction industry, some much needed relief by giving these essential businesses much needed cash flow. That's what I heard most about was cash flow. So I work hard to ensure these bills I put my name on are ones that I think will have a positive impact on the community and on the construction community. And it's gonna help regular, hardworking folks of Colorado. I think this epitome of that idea, actually. So I'm really proud to bring House Bill 1167. And I'll pass it on to my very capable co-sponsor.
Representative Duran.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So it's been more than 1 year since the COVID-19 pandemic took hold in the United States, and now we have a working understanding of the impact that the virus has had on every one of us. The impact is felt deeply in our communities and in no small part due to the effect that it has had on our small businesses. Our small businesses give back. They are the backbone of our communities. They are critical to our recovery. We can't let one single one of them to be left behind. House Bill 1167 puts a 5% retainage cap for private construction into contracts so that property owners cannot withhold more than 5% to the total price of the project worth at least $150,000. The same goes for contractors withholding from subcontractors and subcontractors withholding from subcontractors and suppliers and so on. We already have this cap for public entities. Aligning the two statutes would be huge for our small and medium-sized construction businesses. If they don't have to carry that 10% retainage, then they can do so much more to grow their businesses, fuel our economy, help Colorado recover from the pandemic, create new projects, buy new equipment, and to be able to offer benefits to their employees. I ask for a yes vote on House Bill 1167.
Representative Will.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, some of these subcontractors, they commonly carry hundreds of thousands of dollars in retainage and wait on an average of 5 months for that, and some of them even up to a couple of years. And the way some of these are, I mean, they got to wait on some of these bigger contracts. They got to wait for the landscaping to come up before they get a completed project to get that retainage fee, and it's just not right. So please ask for an aye vote on this.
Is there any for Representative Carver?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I voted for this bill in committee. Once it became clear through witness testimony that there is still the ability of the prime contractor to withhold payment if the work has not been completed satisfactorily. So with that off the table, what has this practice been? This practice has been holding up to 10% of money that is owed for work that has been completed by the small business, by the sub. So the work has been done. It has been accepted as satisfactory. The money is owed. And yet we heard testimony, and I received over a dozen emails from small businesses in my district that they were waiting 2 and 3 years to get complete payment because of these provisions in the contract. So this again would align with public projects. There is a fairness issue here, just like we have acted in other circumstances where the money is owed, and quite frankly, it's the difference in economic power and bargaining power that is being utilized here to delay payment. So I urge and I vote.
Representative Sandridge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First thing, I want to thank the sponsors for bringing this bill forward. They did. I'm sure you're answering some calls from some of your constituents. I know this bill has been years in the making and has struggled. I want to just discuss this bill in a more of a macro level at first. So what this bill basically is, there is no 10% in statute. That's a common use. And what this bill is, it's the government going into a certain industry and regulating it and saying actually that they know better. So this is a pure regulation bill. What we've seen is that the industry has worked out. The industry needs to have a certain leeway to work with each other. Some, and let me give an example of how I think this could actually hurt some of the little guys. You have a contractor that's new, and they're trying to get their foot in the door, trying to get some experience. And, after this law is passed, let's say it does pass, they're going to be set at 5%. I have a feeling, because I look back when I owned certain businesses, would I give somebody new an opportunity at 5%, or would I just go to an experienced contractor at 5%? I would go to the experience. I guarantee the new contractor would love to get his foot in the door at 10% or whatever it is, but I wouldn't be giving that person that opportunity. So in many ways, this bill could hurt the little guy from getting, or little guy, little girl, however you want to claim it, from getting their foot in the door. The bill sounds good in theory, but when practicality comes up, I think it's going to be hurting some of the smaller, newer contractors, and will definitely help the more established ones. So we got to look at ourselves. Why is the government coming in and saying they know better than the industry? Why does the government need to feel that they need to come in and regulate? I think it's best that when you have a contract or two people at a table in business and they're trying to work out the risk tolerance and they're trying to work out whether it should be 3%, 0%, 12%, that we not go in there and put our nose in that contract. Because when you look at somebody getting ready to hire a contractor, they know their risk tolerance. And they're looking at a contractor and they're deciding their risk tolerance. And we're coming in saying, we know your risk tolerance better, it's 5%. I think we would need to really reevaluate the unintended consequences of this bill, and I ask for a no vote. Thank you.
Representative Byrd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And we heard this bill in committee, and I want the chamber to know that this has been an issue that's been around for a very long time. I know I first became aware of it several years ago in meetings with small independent contractors where they were talking about payments being withheld for no cause. That's what this system is. And this point was made clear in committee that the system of retainage is a withholding of money that is legally due and owing to a contractor that has done the work on the job, but it's withheld for no cause. So people who are parties to a contract have all other kinds of ways to negotiate with one another to assess and price and account for risk. So with insurance, with the cost, the interest rate on a loan, and that can be charged at a much higher rate to account for risk. So nobody's taking away parties to a contract's ability to price for risk, account for risk. Also, fundamentally, two parties to a contract can decide not to enter into business with one another if they feel that the risk created in that relationship is too great to bear. So we haven't done anything, this bill won't do anything to take away independent people's right to negotiate for the terms and conditions that best support the needs of the deal they're trying to make. I firmly support this bill. This is fundamental fairness for small businesses. Businesses, again, who are having working capital withheld for no cause. One other point I wanted to make is that in the course of a construction project, many times the way contractors are paid is pay for performance, so pay as you go. A contractor or subcontractor will come in, do work, and as the project progresses, the general contractor comes in, checks, assesses, evaluates completion and quality of the work, and signs off, and that subcontractor isn't even paid until it's already been determined that the work has been appropriately done. So people should be paid for their work, and there really isn't an excuse for allowing a smaller group of entities to use outsized bargaining power and really leave no meaningful choice for smaller subcontractors. So members, I urge a yes vote on this bill.
Representative Catlin, then Will Bockenfield Sandridge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's an honor to serve with you.
And you.
Thank you. Members, I'm here today to talk about what happens in smaller communities, in places where a lot of times we know one another. And what's happening in my country right now is there are some big contracts that are being let in Telluride and places like that, and even in my hometown of Montrose. But what's happening is that after the work is done, this withholding of 10% until it's final is starting to break some of our contractors, literally put them out of business. Because one of the things that they have to do is they have to wait until that contract is completed, signed off. And a lot of those keep getting pushed back. So what ends up happening is our contractors then have to go to the local bank and borrow that money that's being withheld. And that allows the individual that's putting the project into the ground, bringing it out, to run on their money, so to speak. Yet these contractors are borrowing the money and paying the interest to try and keep their workers and their operations afloat. It seems to me to be a strategy on folks that really understand money, the value of money, how to make investments, how to do the things that make them 0.5% more or whatever it is. This is an opportunity for us to say, hey, it's okay. Write a contract the way you want it, but don't get on your high horse and start telling us, no, we're not going to pay you, because I've had numerous calls in the interim. In fact, before this bill was brought forward, contractors calling me and telling me what had been going on, 18 months from the time a contract was finished. 18 months. So look, let's try and put some common sense into this. I don't want to get into the arguments that are being made, but this is on the ground, will help individuals that are hiring and keeping people in jobs during an extremely tough period of time. Thank you. I would encourage you to vote yes.
Representative Bockenfield.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's an honor to serve with you.
And you.
To follow up on what Representative Catlin was saying, I spent part of my career as a special asset lender in the banking industry. And what happens in the banking industry, the larger and medium-sized businesses, Madam, could I have some quiet in the room here?
Members, could we please, it's getting a little loud and I cannot hear our colleague.
I think this is an important point that folks need to understand. Larger and medium-sized businesses are rewarded for holding on to someone else's cash as long as they can. And why do they do that? Because they invest it, and those investment revenues impact their balance sheet. However, when I was a special asset lender, I specialized in small business. And what happens in small business is all about cash flow. Like Representative Catlin explained, if a small business doesn't have cash flow, then they have to go to the bank and they have to get a line of credit to fill that gap until the main contractor pays, which is usually a larger or mid-sized company. So you got one company that's earning interest on holding the money and wants to hold as long as they want, and then you have a subcontractor who's borrowing money, paying interest on it in order to float the cash flow to keep the business going and keep the workers. So what this does is this cuts through that process. As Representative Carver explained, is that once this project is substantially complete, then at that time, that money, or at least a substantial portion of that money, needs to be released and only a minimal amount held. And because of that dynamic, it does not hurt small business. This bill helps small business. This bill helps small businesses to grow and to add more employees. I ask for an aye vote on this bill.
Representative Sandridge.
This does the exact opposite of helping small business. If you've ever ran a small business, you're trying to get your foot in the door. And now you're dictating in contracts the risk level. So let's just take this out of the textbooks and put it in reality. You have an experienced contractor that's been around for years. You have a new person. You're at 5% risk level. Who are you going to pick? The experienced person that's been around for years and has a track record? Or are you going to pick the newbie? And to everybody who's owned businesses, you know what the answer is. And again, what's shocking is we think that we are smarter than this industry and we can go in there and tell them what to do. But I'd like to talk about some of the comments that this money is held for no just cause. If you talk to the industry who hires these contractors, they have just cause. And the words that saying anybody, that this doesn't change the ability to form a contract, it sure does change the ability to form a contract. And I have to say something that I agreed with earlier, or something that was stated earlier. Nobody's forcing these people into a contract, and they can walk away. I agree. And what will happen is they will not hire new contractors. They will walk away, and the new contractors won't get the job. I know this sounds good. It sounds great for the government to step in and tell an industry what to do. But we see it in, and I don't want to get into history, over and over this fails. Over and over. When we come in and dictate risk levels, it just doesn't work. And it's going to hurt the little guy. We can see it all through history in other countries, examples of this type of mindset. So learn history about the government coming in, regulating risk levels, regulating costs, regulating pay, and it always goes down in flames. So I ask for a no vote. Thank you.
Representative Carver.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to speak to the last point. It was my understanding from the witness testimony that part of the negotiation with the bill sponsors added provisions to the bill so that if in fact there was unsatisfactory performance, if there was a just cause to withhold final payment, there was something more that needed to be done with regards to the sub's work, that in those instances the payment could still be withheld. And it was with that understanding that I was in support of the bill. So understand folks can read the bills different ways, but that was certainly the witness testimony. And again, this is work completed, work satisfactory and accepted with no outstanding issues. Money is due. Pay the money.
Representative Benavides, then Van Winkle, then Larson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And members, I had the pleasure of substituting in the Business Committee when this bill was heard and listening to the testimony. One of the things in my background, some of you may not know, is I've been a director of a construction company for at least 30 years and have for a period of time was general counsel. And a lot of the projects our construction company did were public projects. And public projects already have retainage in statute. The retainage is 5%, and these are all, what we're talking about here is private projects, and there is no retainage set. And I think one of the members talked about that this is not set in law, that 10% is the retainage amount for private projects, but it is the industry practice. And I say the practice because it was a unilateral decision by private contractors to set retainage at 10%. It was not agreed to by the subcontractors involved. And the testimony that we heard was that there were several contractors that talked about their accounts receivables, and their accounts receivables were in the thousands, even the hundreds of thousands of dollars, not just after they finished the project, they would get the money. No, these were there for years. There was one contractor out of Adams County that spoke to the amount she had in retainage as accounts receivable. And when I asked her, well, okay, the general contractors are saying they need that in case there's a problem. And she testified that on all of her projects, 100% of the retainage was returned to her, which meant that there were no problems to fix. And it's one thing to say, I understand retainage. If I was the general contractor, I would want to have something there if I went afterwards and did a punch list and found some problems to be able to fix it, instead of having to go through the mechanics liens process or ultimately arbitration or in court. A lot of these are resolved in arbitration. But anyway, the reality is that early subs, particularly, when you think of a project, think of the subcontractors that have to go in and dig out the dirt and lay the foundation. We had one person testify, projects can last, when they do the first part, that project can last 3 or 4 years. So they're holding on to 10% of their money for 3 or 4 years, even though they finished during the first few months of that project. Somebody has that money and is making interest off of it, where the subcontractor is waiting to be paid. We also had subcontractors talk about, with that retainage being held, that they talked about their profit margin. And the profit margin is generally 10% or less, because when you're out bidding projects, You want to be competitive. So oftentimes you will go below the 10% on your profit margin. So that profit margin is what oftentimes is being upheld, which means the subcontractor can't pay their staff. They can't have people go out and bid projects. They pay the superintendents, the foremen on the job. They can't do that. It limits the amount of work that they can take in. So it is a real problem. And that is why we need 5%. And 5% was not pulled out of the air. It is the amount we use for public projects, and it works. And so we've shown that. And big contractors are still able to use brand new subcontractors if they want on those public projects. And this works. The other measures that we should be looking at are that some states, ours, some local governments have prompt payment measures, where if they don't pay, usually within 45 days after the work, they have to pay interest. That doesn't exist on those private projects. So as someone else testified, the banks were testifying that they wanted a lower, medium rate between 5 and 10%, because they need to be able to lend money. Well, I think as Rep. Bockenfeld said, the banks are going to make their money either way, because either the subs have to borrow it to do cash flow to pay for their workers, or the larger contractors will borrow it. They're still going to make money. They don't really have a dog in the fight. So this is a good measure that puts private projects in line with public projects in this state, and it helps small contractors. So I encourage a yes vote to this bill.
Representative Van Winkle.
Thank you, Chair. Now, much of the debate, and I appreciate the comments about the 5% versus 10% thing, but much of the debate has been around whether it is a role of government to mandate specific contract agreements, to mandate specific clauses within a contract, and to take that negotiation, which right now it's a negotiation of, well, should it be 5%, 7%, 8, 9, 10, 12, 14%? And that's a conversation that's had before the contract is signed and both parties agree to. A lot of the conversation has been around that. And I have serious concerns with the state legislature essentially coming in and saying, okay, for this entire industry, I mean, it's not like in some industries where there's one or two nationwide insurance companies that are mandating stuff on all of Colorado's small businesses. This is a free market with lots of participants, and it is a big move to move the state legislature into contracts between two free parties and to tell them this is the way it ought to be. Now, to the 5% to 10% thing, that I have serious concerns with, because we've heard time and time again that the industry norm is 10%. That was in the free market and the free contracts between person A, person B, company A, company B. 10% is essentially where the industry has fallen, and it's been agreed upon time and time again in statute. So to one, put this in a statute, that's a dramatic shift. To two, move it the industry norm that is between two private parties, that now is about 10%, and move it down to 5%. That is a dramatic shift. And so I propose to find a midpoint. I propose to find a negotiated compromise, and I move L002.
L002 has been properly displayed. Representative Van Winkle to the amendment.
Yeah, and thank you, Madam Chair. And this will come as no surprise to the folks that were on Business Committee, because it's the same exact amendment that I ran in Business Committee, hoping to find a midpoint, hoping to find a compromise here, because what we've heard time and time again is that the 5%, putting it in statute first of all, then making it 5%, that will disproportionately impact smaller contractors, disproportionately impact the new contractors who are trying to, in this, making it 8% as opposed to 5%. It's still a pretty dramatic shift. One, to take this negotiation completely off the table because the government is coming in, but two, it will still impact contracts. It'll still move it from that 10% down to 8%, but it won't be so dramatic as moving it down to 5%. So ask for a yes vote.
Representative Duran, but first, members, it's loud, please keep it down.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We discussed, this amendment was brought in Business and Labor. We discussed this in length, and I'll say briefly that we had many discussions, and one of the compromises, instead of doing 0% retainage, as much of the coalition had wanted, we did 5% to line it up with public statute where that's 5% retainage. So I ask for a no vote.
Representative Sandridge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I stand in favor of this amendment. I'm not a huge fan of it. So the 8% allows negotiation between 0 and 8, which is a little better than 0 than 5. But I'm not in favor of any percentage. I'm in favor of the two private parties discussing it, and if they want it 20% or 0%, that's none of my business. So I'm not a fan of dictating anything. And I think there were some people who are fans of 0%. Well, if you have two parties that agree on 0%, let's have it 0%. Or if you have two parties that want to give a new company a chance and have it 12%, let's have it 12%. But I think my point is it's none of our business. When you attack free markets, you kill jobs, you kill business. I mean, this is throughout history. So I stand in favor of the amendment because it opens up a broader negotiating range. But at the end of the day, I don't think we should be dictating this. So thank you.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L002. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No. The amendment is lost. To the bill, Representative Larson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's an honor to serve with you.
And you.
So, members, this bill is interesting. So I had this bill brought to my attention last year and have been keeping a close eye on it because it's a very interesting issue. It's not a cut and dry one. And up until recently, I honestly had not made up my mind. I'm ultimately up here in favor of the bill, and I'll tell you why. Because over the course of my looking into this, and frankly, my experience putting out 2 construction bid projects myself as a private business owner, what I found is that actually this marketplace is already so distorted, and there's so much demand for subcontract and contracted construction labor right now. Essentially, what I heard and what I saw in my own experience, you couldn't get subcontractors to take private jobs because the government jobs paid better, they had lower retainage amounts, and there's so much work going around that subs would just turn their nose up at projects like mine, built out of a private retail business at the $100,000 range. A lot of folks were just like, it's not worth my time. So, I appreciate the defense of the free market that some of my colleagues are coming up here, but I think it's just fundamentally misunderstanding what's actually going on the ground, because the market we have right now, private companies at the small level are just they're not appealing under these conditions. At the mid-level, even they are having difficulty attracting subs and general contractors into this space because there are so many other government contracts that they can go to. I appreciate having what I call the punch list provisions in here. There is still an ability to hold subs accountable for work that hasn't been completed. That was something that was a concern for me, which is why I hadn't made up my mind on the bill, but that issue's been addressed. Again, I think 5% is good because it puts us in line with public projects for retainage. It creates a consistency across the industry. It also sets it at a level that is still an incentive for subs to come and make sure that work is done, because 5% for most projects is the profit margin, but it's not eating into payroll. And what Representative Bockenfeld spoke to is an absolute thing that I hear time and time again. It's one thing for a sub to not have to wait to receive their profit margin on a project. It's quite another for them to wait to receive money that is paying for actual material or labor costs that they incur, and then have to go out, borrow money, and finance operations because their client is withholding the money. So because of all of that, I would just like to encourage all of my colleagues to support this bill because it is thoughtful, it is a fair compromise, and the idea that this is distorting the market, well, the market's already distorted. There's already a clear favorability toward government projects in the industry because there's more consistency. This will let not only those subcontractors compete better in that space, but also small businesses and smaller projects in the private sector that need construction will make them more appealing to those subs and those general contractors so that, you know, when I go out to bid a project, I don't get 5 different contractors saying, oh, this is too small for me to consider. And I'm not the only business in this state that has had that experience. Talk to anybody that's had any kind of retail construction in the last 5 years, you will hear that. So thank you to the sponsors for the bill, and I will be in support.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Van Winkle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so if I understand correctly, and those were good remarks, government came into this free market and completely disrupted it. And to solve that problem, we're going to expand the government mandate from just government contracts to the entire free market. I urge a no vote on this bill.
Any further discussion on House Bill 1167? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1167. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The bill passes. Next, Mr. Gregorio, please read the title to House Bill 1067.
House Bill 1067 by Representatives Kipp and Exum, also Senators Story and Buckner, concerning the National Assessment Test Score as an eligibility criterion for admission to a Colorado institution of higher education.
Representative Kipp.
I move HB 21-1067, National Test Score optional, and I also move the committee report.
To the committee report.
So in the committee report, we did what they call, I believe, advanced amendment procedures. And in our advanced amendment procedures, we got a couple of things messed up that the amendment, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't move the amendment. Is the amendment, what number is it? Sorry. I forgot to keep a copy. L007 to the amendment report, to the committee report.
Can you move it, please?
I move L007.
The amendment is displayed. Please, has been moved and is displayed. Please proceed.
Thank you. So basically, in our advanced amendment procedures, we got a couple of things wrong. We need to make sure that we're referring to the Department of Higher Education, not the Department of Education. And we just had another wording issue, but that's all we are doing with the amendment to the committee report.
Is there any discussion on L007? Seeing, Representative Baisley.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay. Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L007. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed, no. The amendment is adopted. To the committee report, Representative.
Oh.
Yep. Nope. Exum.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We just had, we asked for a aye vote on the committee report as amended.
The question before us is the adoption of the Education Committee report. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The committee report is adopted. To the bill, Representative Exum.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, House Bill 1067 is an optional national test score bill. The test scores using admission decisions to create an additional barrier that's already marginalized students. Removing this barrier gives institutions an opportunity to increase access, diversify their student body, and utilize the holistic mix of metrics that have been proven to predict student success, including a high GPA, performance in core subjects, concurrent enrollment, AP, IP, work, leadership, life experiences. More than 1,600 institutions across the country, including the University of Indiana, University of Chicago, Wake Forest, Bucknell, have went to test optional, along with our state universities and state colleges. The CU Boulder Chancellor wrote in an op-ed regarding this bill, and he said CU discovered when they recently dropped the test scores requirement after we passed House Bill 1407, because of the temporary reprieve from requiring test scores for graduating high school seniors in 2021, CU Boulder applicant pool is stronger and more diverse than ever before. More than 24% of students of color submitting applications. And 1067 continues this good work. We ask for an aye vote.
Representative Kipp.
So there are really two excellent reasons to pass HB 21-1067. The first one is because we don't want to leave our institutions behind. Our institutions of higher education rely primarily on tuition these days because as a state, we do not adequately fund them. So we don't want to leave them in the dust by giving them more issues with recruiting students and retaining students because they require a national test score. And so many institutions across the country are no longer requiring that, including places like Harvard and other Ivy League institutions. Additionally, we do not want to leave our students behind. We have found that because of the bill we passed last year, which put a one-year pause on requiring a national test score for admissions to our public colleges and universities, that we have the most diverse class ever applying to college for the coming fall. We have also found that the reason that people are deciding to go test optional, most of our colleges and universities throughout the entire country, is that these tests have biases and they do discriminate against kids from less advantaged backgrounds. So we wish to end the discrimination that these tests allow to happen. So we urge an aye vote on this bill.
Representative Baisley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, representatives, for bringing this bill. This is like every bill that ain't perfect. It's got some good and some not so, and so I'll express my view on it. So what I like about it is it's a local control issue. It gives the institutions the authority to decide how to choose the applicants that are coming to their school, choose who they want to represent them going forward in life, and I think that is a good thing. They are in competition, obviously, with and our institution, our state institutions are in competition with other states that are dropping the national test score requirement. So that makes them want to have the flexibility. So I understand that, and I think they should have that flexibility. On the other hand, there's a little caution, of course, in lowering standards. We don't want to do that. But the other issue is reporting requirements. There's heavy reporting requirements that I object to. Also, there's a wait and see piece to this, and that is that this extends for 10 years. I would have been more comfortable with 5 years, but okay, this will give it, because we have to give it time to see how this works out. So it will come back to this body in 10 years for review. But at any rate, so all that to say, from my vantage, vote your conscience. It's got some pluses and minuses, but I appreciate the intent of it in the beginning and appreciate the sponsors for bringing it.
Representative Larson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I rise in strong opposition to this bill. But first of all, I do want to start by saying that I appreciate and indeed agree with the stated aim of this bill, which is to make college admission more accessible and to make our students who are traditionally not college bound more successful in their college careers and their attainment of higher education. But I view this bill as addressing a symptom of a larger issue, but not addressing the issue itself. In committee, we heard testimony from our state's higher education institutions talking about how this is potentially going to make them less competitive across the state. We heard a lot of data where they correlated zip code and wealth of the family to test scores in the SAT, which is indeed correct. There is a strong correlation between family income and SAT score. However, in committee, they were asked if there is a similar correlation between GPA, if there was a similar correlation between the availability of AP and IB curricula and other advanced placement courses, if there was a similar correlation between access to high-quality K-12 institutions in those neighborhoods. And there was no answer. They were evasive. They either did not have the information or did not want to offer it. I will tell you that the data is there, and those correlations are the exact same for all of those metrics. So, to identify the SAT as the unique barrier to students of color or students from socioeconomically disadvantaged backgrounds is, in my mind, totally papering over the issue. And the real issue is that we do not provide quality K-12 institutions to our children, especially our children in socioeconomically and racially diverse backgrounds. That is why we see that gulf in our college acceptance. It is not because the SAT is uniquely positioned as a barrier. I would suggest that the proper way to address this would be to ensure that our schools are better preparing our students, to ensure that these students have access to SAT prep material so that they can perform better on this test. The other consequence that I really am very concerned about with this bill is that, for better or worse, SAT scores are the only truly objective data point that is submitted in an application. You know, everybody is aware of GPA and grade inflation, which runs rampant across our entire nation. And everybody is also aware that extracurricular activities and the other more subjective components of a college application disproportionately favor the wealthy student. If I have a student who has a parent who has the ability to send them on that, missions trip over the summer, send them to a volleyball camp to compete at the highest intercollegiate athletic level, those things are advantaged toward people with a better socioeconomic background. And by removing the SAT, those students are going to have an even more unfair advantage now, because now you're going to be going off of a GPA and whatever your parents' socioeconomic situation afforded that student to be able to do. So I also want to address, there's a study that's often cited in this area. It's probably the most popular study. It was by a man named Hiss and some of his educating compatriots. And the data on it is frankly very convoluted. It does show for highly competitive institutions, so we're talking about the Harvards, we're talking about schools with acceptance rates in the either low teens or single digits, that there is a positive impact on diversity and admission of applicants in those instances. And that may very well be true. But that same study shows that not only is there not a positive impact on the diversity of admissions to more, middle accepting, which our state institutions fall into that. Our state institutions in the state are great, but we are not, CU does not have an acceptance rate in the low teens. Its acceptance rate is above 50%, which is great. But for those institutions, there is no increased diversity. There is no positive impact on socioeconomic admissions, according to these studies. And in fact, there is slight indication that it may have an adverse impact for these groups. So you cannot come in here and bandy out what Harvard does with their 6% acceptance rate and draw a correlation to CU, because it's simply not as a competitive environment. and it's not apples to apples. So I really urge strong caution for people in pursuit of a very worthy goal of increasing college accessibility, not to charge in, not to put the cart before the horse and remove the only objective standard that we have in college admissions. Because I think it will, in the long term, hurt the stated goal, which again, and I cannot emphasize this enough, this is a very worthy goal, and I am in no way speaking down to what the sponsors are trying to accomplish here, because it is important. But I just want to come down here and tell you that I honestly think that this bill is going to have a detrimental impact. And I think 5 to 10 years from now, if we do implement this policy, which other states like California have turned their back on. California very publicly has refused to adopt this policy. That should give you caution. They did the same thing we did last year, but when there was a push to permanently eliminate their test scores in their public institutions, they said no. That's going on right now. So I would urge caution. I would not take what we did last year and data that is not even fully baked. We haven't even, most of these students have not even completed their first year of college that they were admitted on yet. I would strongly urge caution to radically shift public policy based on an incomplete data set, based on a single study that has mixed results, and that, frankly, I think will end up hurting the very people that we are looking to help. And I would suggest that if we want to further this policy, that what we should be doing is ensuring that our public K-12 education system is more accessible, that every student, regardless of their socioeconomic background or their racial background, has access to a high-quality K-12 school with advanced placement and IB and all of the things that were available to me as a kid in the affluent suburbs in South Denver, and ensure that our entire K-12 system is more equitable, and that will see the better outcomes that we want, not removing the only objective standard in college admissions. So members, I urge a no vote.
Representative Kipp, but before you go, members, super loud.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So most of you know, and I'm sorry I have to keep saying this, but before I joined the legislature, I was a member of my local school board for 7 years. During that time, I learned about Colorado's higher education institutions moving to a more holistic admissions process. Let me tell you a little bit about what that means. That means that now our admissions counselors at most of our public colleges and universities actually go through a pretty extensive training every single year so that they can better learn how to holistically evaluate our students. Let me give you an example. If a kid who is homeless has a 3.2 GPA, and a kid from my house has a 3.2 GPA, no offense to my own children, but who do you think has the most persistence and is going to be able to get through college? The kid who has overcome the most obstacles. So what our admissions counselors have been working on for a decade is to ask essay questions and ask questions which will elicit the responses which describe a kid's full life experience. We want those life experiences to be used in considering which kids are most likely to persist in admissions. When you talk about the funding mechanism for institutions of higher education, a significant portion comes from, first, being able to retain the kids and get them to graduate that you admit. So that's how our institutions are paid. They're also paid on the number of low-income and first-generation and more diverse students that they are able to accept and retain. So given that they have an incentive to do this already, given that every single public college and university in our state has said, you know what, we're the professionals, why are you putting into statute something that doesn't need to be there, that is a discriminatory policy for our students? The reporting aspect of this bill has a 10-year timeline because that's what many of our stakeholders asked. They said, we want to make sure this policy is working. So what this will allow is for 4 6-year cohorts of students to have data, and at the end of that decade, people can decide if they think it was a good policy. I still ask for an aye vote. I don't see any reason to oppose this. If you'd like to see some of the data, feel free to come down. I have some here in my folder.
Representative Holtorf.
Thank you, Madam Chair, esteemed colleagues. A famous radio talk show host once said, here's the rest of the story. I'm not opposed to what our prime sponsors are doing and their intentions. But I want to talk about something we need to accept. And we need to talk about before the entire state of Colorado and in this chamber. So, first I want to say that college enrollment is down. COVID-19 has affected that. Our state universities and colleges are in financial trouble. Very much like a failing business, their costs are too high, their overhead's too high, and their cash inflows or enrollment is too low. And they've recognized this business model problem. Now, I'm not saying that is the reason they are asking for this legislation, but it may have something to do with it at this time. But here's my concern. And I understand the discussion that we want to make the path to college entrance easier. We want to make the path to college entrance more subjective and holistic. But here's the problem we face when we take this journey. As we in the world stage compete to keep our society highly educated, our STEM level as high as possible, and all the things we do as we educate our workforce. Oftentimes, and we had this discussion about measurement, oftentimes these particular tests are a measure. They are only one part of a measure of your ability, your academic ability. Now, we all took the ACT and SAT, or many of us did in our lives, to get into college. Many of us didn't like our first score, and we were told by our college faculty advisor or the counselor, hey, you know, you can take that test again. And there's a study guide you can study actually to improve your test scores, so you can get a higher score and get better consideration for admittance in the colleges or universities of your choice. And some of us even did that. With this, that process will go away, I believe, and the bill sponsors can let me know that that process will go away. And then we are taking another level of testing away. And here's my real concern. Do we then lower our standards as a state? Do we then lower our standards not only going into our colleges and universities, but perhaps those leaving our college and universities? Do then we not have the ability in future time to compete against those countries that are very aggressive in testing and have some of the highest academic level programs and criteria of any countries in the world? Now, most of you know that I spent a little time in the military, and most of you may not know I lived 4 years of my life in the Republic of Korea, a country that is hyper-focused on education of their youth. And one of the reasons that they are exceeding to the levels they are. Now, I will tell you, in that country, when it was test week in the Republic of Korea, we couldn't even fly our helicopters because they said it might disrupt the students in their preparation for their testing, their mental preparation, and their performance of their testing. The entire country would literally nearly shut down so those kids in that country could do nothing but focus on the academic testing that was done to determine their future. And we want to compete with this country. I'll speak of Japan, I'll speak of Korea, many of those countries. They actually go in the opposite direction of this bill. And I do have a concern, ladies and gentlemen, that if we move forward in this direction, that yes, there will be more people getting into colleges and universities, but will we lower our standards of performance in our society in the out years? And that is my real concern, and I would really like the bill sponsors to speak to that, to see if they can help me with this concern.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1067? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1067 as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The bill passes. Assistant Majority Leader Gonzalez Gutierrez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to lay over House Bill 1092 until tomorrow.
Are there any objections? Seeing none, House Bill 1092 will be laid over until tomorrow as requested by the Assistant Majority Leader. Mr. Gregorio, please read the title to House Bill 1160.
House Bill 1160 by Representatives Duran and Soper, also Senator Janal, concerning the care of pet animals and the custody of certain pet animal facilities.
Representative Soper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1160 and the committee report of the House Agricultural Committee.
To the committee report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the House Ag Committee, we added one amendment. It was developed after feedback from stakeholders who had complained about how there was nothing that prohibiting adoption in the original bill. So we want to address that. So the amendment that was adopted in House Ag now includes other potential live outcomes to encompass other live placements, for example, fostering, transferring to another shelter, or returning to their owner. And I'd ask for a yes vote.
Representative Duran.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have an amendment to the bill. Do I need to move that now?
Is it to the committee report or to
the bill?
Okay, then let's, is there any further discussion on the committee report? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The committee report is adopted. To the bill, Representative Duran.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to present Amendment L003 to the bill.
The amendment has been moved and properly displayed. Representative Duran. Did you move it, actually? Okay, please move it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move Amendment L003.
Okay, now the amendment has been moved to L003.
You have another one?
Representative Duran.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Amendment L003, in testimony in committee, it was implied that the bill prohibited the adoption or other live outcomes for dogs and cats that were not healthy and safe. So this amendment clarifies that the bill prescribes behavior when an animal is healthy and safe, but does not dictate or prohibit any behavior for animals that are not healthy and safe, and explicitly states that the bill does not prohibit the adoption, return, or transfer of an animal that is not healthy and safe. So the new language would read, for each healthy and safe dog or cat in custody, an animal shelter or animal rescue shall adopt out the animal, return the animal to its owner, or transfer the animal to another animal shelter or pet animal rescue. And I ask for a yes vote.
Any discussion on L003? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L003. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The amendment is adopted. To the bill, Representative Soper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is our socially conscious bill for shelters and rescues. And one thing that we really wanted to make sure is when it comes to our dogs and cats that they have the best care when they're in our shelters or rescues. It only applies to shelters or rescues and ensures that they receive veterinary care if they need that while they're there, and that euthanasia would only be used in instances where it concerned the animal's health, meaning they're not healthy, or they're not safe, meaning they're a danger to humans or other animals. This is something that's in line definitely with a national movement and the fact that dogs and cats are part of our families, so we should treat them the best that we can. I'd ask for a yes vote.
Representative Duran.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So with House Bill 1160, it just makes sure that every healthy and safe cat and dog in the shelter is adopted, that the medical and behavioral needs of cats and dogs are addressed individually because they each have individual needs, and that this part of this legislation for Colorado will be leading the way in how we treat our animals and cats to making sure that they find those forever homes that they need. And I ask for a yes vote.
Representative Holtorf.
Thank you, Madam Chair, bill sponsors. You may notice that I was the one no vote in committee, in the Ag, Livestock, and Water Committee on this bill. And there's a couple things that came out in committee that I think are worthy of mention in this House chamber. There was a significant uproar by the no-kill community in Colorado with regard to how this bill was written. And that was noted by hours and hours of testimony. The process of euthanasia, or the determination of euthanasia, can be subjective. And this bill allows those shelters to make that determination. That was one issue that I believe is significant. Additionally, the small shelters are very concerned that this legislation has a bias towards the larger shelters that are tied to national humane organizations and their subordinate state humane organizations and their subordinate county organizations. There's a significant concern about this bias in the genesis of this legislation against them. So those are two very important points. Now, I was asked to run an amendment that was not considered, and I thought it was an important amendment. And I'm going to speak to that amendment now, and this is another reason I voted no. And I'm always troubled in committee when we just discount amendments because nobody talked to me before committee, so I'm not going to listen to this amendment. You should have come and talked to me before committee. That's not what I believe the committee process is all about. It's a dynamic process. There is discovery that can happen in committee, and those good ideas need to be vetted, introduced, and discussed. So with respect to disease vectors and disease control, I was very concerned as a livestock producer about this, and I did offer an amendment. It was not accepted. And it was a friendly amendment. And it merely said something that we always talk about. If there's a disease issue, then the consumer should know about it. Just like in a previous piece of legislation, well, we said if there's a puppy that's going to be offered for sale in a pet store, then they need to know where that puppy came from. It's called full disclosure. It's called communicating with the consumer. It's called consumer protection. In fact, that bill was said to be carried as a consumer protection bill. But the amendment I offered was also a consumer protection bill, and it was also, ladies and gentlemen, a bill that helped the animal. We want to talk about animal welfare. Because if there was a disease problem, the person that acquired that animal was to be notified within a 15-day window. But I guess that didn't matter on this bill. Consumer protection may not be at the level of importance or even the life of that particular animal, because if they did have this epidemic, and I'll use brucellosis as an example, we have that in the beef industry, which causes an immediate quarantine and immediate reaction from our veterinary medicine professionals that requires an immediate response. And yes, PACFA does have a process for this, and it was pointed out in committee, but I will tell you, the wheels of bureaucracy in government move slow. Let's be honest. They move slow. But if in this particular piece of legislation you said that you had to notify either before or after that this animal was exposed to that particular disease, and the consumer was notified that that was a disease that did have an occurrence in this particular shelter, that those people should be notified as soon as possible, which probably would take hours, but not more than a day, that wasn't important. And that really bothered me. That really bothered me. It kind of still bothers me if we want to talk about consumer protection and taking care of animals. So I will tell you, I still have that concern. It still bothers me that good amendments offered in committees get discarded because it doesn't fit somebody's narrative or it doesn't fit the promoter's idea of what that bill's supposed to do, even though it's a good amendment. And it has a place in that particular piece of legislation for the good of our citizens and the good of, in this case, the animals that we're supposed to care so much about. So I thank you for your time, and I'll yield to the bill sponsors for a response.
Representative Arndt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I think it's important to say that the amendment had a full and fair hearing and that there was a due process of amendments in committee, and it's called the vote, and the amendment did not prevail. You can call it a friendly amendment. It was friendly. We're very friendly on the committee. But I guess what we mean by a friendly amendment is that the ones that do survive. And the only reason why this one failed is because the majority of the committee voted it down. So let's be accurate when we report what happened in committee. We discussed the amendment. It was considered. We took a vote, and it was voted down. So not every amendment survives, and that's how we roll. Majority votes.
Representative McCormick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to clarify this bill for everyone, that this bill actually sets the floor for the care of dogs and cats in shelters and rescues. It sets the floor while still leaving the ultimate decision of potential euthanasia to those in the veterinary care profession, which is critical so that that right is not taken away from those healthcare professionals. And just to reassure all of you that any zoonotic disease that shows up in a PACFA licensed facility in our state has to be reported to the state veterinarian to make sure that that disease is quarantined, shut down, and taken care of. So just so everyone understands exactly what this bill does, what it doesn't do, and what it doesn't need to do. Thank you very much.
Any further discussion? Representative Holtorf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And we talked a lot about what the bill does and what the bill doesn't do. And there was real concern from the opposition, and I believe it still hasn't been addressed, and it's not addressed in the body of this bill. And it says, the big question we discussed in committee was who or what dictates the standards for the definitions that are in the bill? Definitions of healthy and safe. And how is that going to be consistently upheld through all 300 plus rescues and shelters across the state? In this bill, that is still not clear. And what happens is that becomes very subjective. I'll use an example on Buffalo Springs Ranch. If I've got a herd bull, and he's pretty rank and mean, but he's a darn good bull. Is he safe? That's subjective. It depends on your ability as a cowboy and a cattleman to handle that animal and your horsemanship. People that have lower standards and lower performance levels in the cattle industry and as a cowboy and a horseman, a horsewoman, may shudder because that's not safe. Maybe they say that bull needs to be put down. And I say, well, wait a minute. That's one of my best herd bulls. His genetic potential is incredible. His hybrid vigor is exceptional. His performance in his job is exceptional. So I can't just subjectively say that. So what do I do as a cattle rancher? Well, I think you already know. Based on my demeanor, I keep the bull. Because our subjective level with respect to safety is a different level than most people if you're a hobby farmer or rancher somewhere else and you haven't spent your whole life a horseback. So, those questions are still in this bill. And how do you define the health and safety? As we move forward with this, how many animals will be put down because of that subjective measure that may be much lower in one shelter or by one person that's running a shelter versus another? And that does not get defined in this legislation and still is a very big problem that I had a concern with. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any further discussion on House Representative Soper?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to my colleague. I just want to point out on page 3, it does define safe. It talks about bodily injury or death to another animal or human being. Bodily injury is defined elsewhere in law as damage to a person's physical condition. So I would just say that it is defined in the bill.
Okay, any further discussion on Representative Holtorf?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to my colleague from Delta. So I asked this question of my colleague then. So if you have that definition of bodily injury, if a cat scratches you and breaks your skin and causes you to bleed, does that make that particular situation because of bodily injury? Does that fall under the criteria then of euthanasia? It's subjective. If a dog who is very excited and a prospective owner reaches out to handle him, and if you've ever been bitten by a dog, you know they can bite, and those teeth marks puncture the skin, but it's merely a reaction because of the excitement of that animal because he's scared, does that qualify that animal for euthanasia? Because I will tell you, you may have a dog that bites, but after you gain that animal's confidence and he accepts you, he will never do it again. Some dogs with the greatest reputation for being vicious and violent, when you form that bond with them and they have an understanding, they never do that, they never behave in that characteristic again. So if that one chance moment that happens, does that qualify them for euthanasia and discount their ability to be that forever dog or that forever cat in a home somewhere in Colorado? And that was brought up. And I don't want to belabor the points that were brought up all in committee today, but I just really want the bill sponsors to know this bill is lacking. This bill still has some very subjective elements that still are called into question in my mind.
Any further discussion on House Bill 1160? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1160 as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The bill passes. Madam Assistant Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to lay over Senate Bill 26 until tomorrow.
Are there any objections? Seeing none, Senate Bill 26 will be laid over as requested by the Assistant Majority Leader. Mr. Gregorio, please read the title to House Bill 1138.
House Bill 1138 by Representatives McLaughlin and Catlin, also Senator Heisey, concerning clarifying restrictions on the operation of off-highway vehicles.
Representative McLaughlin or Catlin?
Yes, hello. Yes, I'd like to move House Bill 1138 on second reading, and there was no committee report.
Is Representative Catlin?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Members, this is a bill that came into Transportation Committee because of the county commissioners around the state worrying about and not being able to take care of the off-road vehicles that are running up and down the streets and county roads in their counties. This will allow them to designate the roads that can be used by these side-by-sides, and they're very popular, believe me. They're a good thing for Colorado in regards to tourism and that type of thing. It will also close a loophole where you cannot go to another state and get a license plate and put on this vehicle, therefore assuming that you can ride it anywhere, including on highways, county roads, and city streets. This was asked for by the county commissioners across the state of Colorado. It's a good bill. Vote yes.
Any discussion on the committee report? Seeing
There's no committee report, Madam Chair.
Oh, apologies. Any further discussion on the bill? Representative Hanks. Oh, I'm so sorry. Representative McLaughlin.
Thank you. Hard to look at the wall all the time, I get it. No, the counties get to decide which county road people get to use, whether it's populated, whether it's not, whether it has bad erosion control or whatever. So the counties get to decide. But what their decision is, everyone, no matter which state you're registered in, needs to follow that decision of the county. So it's a good bill for local control. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Representative Hanks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've traveled around the great American West quite a bit, and there are great western states that allow their kids to use ATVs to get to school. Get some off of buses, get some, bicycles don't work out in the country. Probably more dangerous than any other mode of transportation as far as getting hit by vehicles going by. At least an ATV can maintain a safe traveling speed. I'm opposed to this. I actually think we ought to be headed the other direction and allowing allowing ATVs and off-road vehicles for rural travel. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Representative D. Valdez.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank the bill sponsors for bringing this bill forward, House Bill 1138. This is a good bill for rural Colorado, not only to explore the great outdoors that Colorado has, but continue to engage people in all levels, especially our youth these days, because behavioral health issues are a good concern moving forward and getting people outdoors. Thank you.
Representative Gray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank the bill sponsors for bringing this bill forward. I want to thank our county commissioners for bringing this bill forward. I agree that these vehicles are a great way to experience the outdoors. I agree with the bill sponsors that it shouldn't be the state of Arizona that decides who can use our local county roads. It should be our local county commissioners. So we should have local control, not just in our state, but within our counties. And I say this, we heard a lot of testimony, and a lot of the titling that people do in order to be able to disregard what the counties ask them to do comes from the great state of Arizona, as do I. I grew up in Arizona, and my brother is a school board president in Arizona, and I love Arizona. I just don't think Arizona should be deciding how we use our roads in Colorado. I think our county commissioners should, so I'm very proud to support the bill.
Any further discussion? Representative Catlin.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. One of the things I wanted to mention so that you're clear on what we're trying to do here, these vehicles will be able to be used on county roads for agricultural purposes only. So we're trying to reach out across the spectrum of recreational and people trying to run these things to help with their farms. This is a good bill. Vote yes.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1138. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The bill passes. Mr. Gregorio, please read the title to Senate Bill 70.
Senate Bill 70 by Senator Moreno, also Representative Byrd, concerning the authority of a Board of County Commissioners to require the registration of businesses.
Representative Byrd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Senate Bill 70.
To the bill.
Members, this is a great bill brought to me by some pretty amazing county commissioners from Adams County. A need was made clear to them during the COVID-19 pandemic that many of our businesses in unincorporated areas of the county weren't able to access important relief that was being made available through state and local government sources because the county didn't have a sufficient way to identify and know where these businesses were or who their contact information was. So what this bill does is gives counties authority to register businesses within their unincorporated areas so that they can have the opportunity to provide them with information regarding business assistance that might be available to them, also convey important information that they need to know. Again, during the COVID pandemic, there was a challenge identifying businesses that needed to be notified of the various public health orders and state law changes that were being made in light of our pandemic. A third benefit of passage of this bill will assist counties in their local economic development efforts. Understanding who is in your unincorporated areas allows the county to be more strategic when it's going out there looking for resources and trying to build good business within its borders. I'll note to you that CCI is in support of this bill, CCAT, the Economic Development Council of Colorado, NFIB, and the Adams County Regional Economic Partnership is also in support. One last thing I'll note is this will be of particular use for small businesses, again, in unincorporated areas of the county that aren't parts of the chambers of commerce, because I know that's another place where smaller businesses tend to get information from. So if you're not in a city and connected to a municipal economic development department and you're not part of a chamber, right now these businesses are at a crucial disadvantage in getting access to key information that really can help them be successful. Members, I urge a yes vote on this bill.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 70. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The bill passes. Madam Assistant Majority Leader Gonzalez Gutierrez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good job. I move that the committee rise and report.
You have heard the motion. The committee will rise and report.
The House will come back to order. Mr. Gregorio, please read the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Mr. Speaker, your Committee of the Whole begs leave to report it as under consideration the following attached bills being the second reading thereof and makes the following recommendations thereon. House Bill 1067 as amended, 1138, 1160 as amended, 1167 passed on second reading and ordered engrossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Senate Bill 70 passed on second reading and ordered revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1092, Senate Bill 26 laid over until 326 and retaining their place on the calendar.
Representative Sirota. You've heard the motion. There are no amendments at the desk. The question before us is the adoption of the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Gregorio, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Amable, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Amable votes yes. Representative Jackson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Jackson votes yes. Representative McLaughlin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative McLaughlin votes yes. Please close the machine. With 42 aye votes, 23 no votes, and 0 excused, the report of the Committee of the Whole is adopted. That brings us to announcements and introductions. Representative Wantine.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Folks, this is actually a really big announcement. And while this pertains specifically to the Health and Insurance Committee, you probably all might be interested to know that House Bill 1232 concerning the establishment of a standardized health benefit plan to be offered in Colorado will not be heard tomorrow, but will be heard Wednesday, March 31st, in the Health and Insurance Committee. So I just wanted to make that announcement as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Wonteen. Further announcements and introductions? See none. Before we make the next motion, we have a little bit of work to do here at the desk. Mr. Gregorio, please read reports of committees of reference.
Committee on Energy and Environment, after consideration of the merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 21-1205 be postponed indefinitely. Senate Bill 20 be referred favorably to the Committee on Finance. Committee on Health and Insurance, after consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1012 be amended as follows and be so amended and be referred to the Committee of the Whole, the Committee on Finance with favorable recommendation. House Bill 1140 be amended as follows and be so amended and be referred to the Committee on Appropriations with favorable recommendation. House Bill 1183 be postponed indefinitely. House Bill 1017 be postponed indefinitely. House Bill 1184 be postponed indefinitely. Committee on Judiciary, after consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1089 be postponed indefinitely. House Bill 1108 be amended as follows and be so amended be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation. House Bill 1110 be amended as follows and be so amended be referred to the Committee on Appropriations with favorable recommendation. House Bill 1143 be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation. Committee on Public Health, Public and Behavioral Health and Human Services, after consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1122 be amended as follows and be so amended be referred to the Committee on Appropriations with favorable recommendation. Committee on Transportation and Local Government, after consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1014 be amended as follows and be so amended and be referred to the Committee on Appropriations with favorable recommendation. House Bill 1066 be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation. House Bill 1073 be referred favorably to the Committee on Finance. House Bill 1128 be referred to the Committee on Appropriations.
Printing report.
The
Printing
chief
report will be printed in the Journal. Message from the Senate.
Mr.
Message from the
Speaker.
Senate will definitely be printed in the Journal. Message from the Reviser.
We herewith
Message from the
transmit.
Reviser will be printed in the Journal. Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House stand in recess until later today.
See no objection. The House will stand in recess until later today.